At the eastern edge of the African continent, where the land rises like a lonely wall against the sky, lies Mount Kilimanjaro. An ancient mountain, over 6,000 meters high, whose silhouette of snow-capped peaks and sun-scorched slopes divides savanna from montane forest, fog from drought, life from death. Here, under a sky that burns equally high and low, more than 150 species of mammals and birds resist, hunt, and die. The leopard lurks among the high branches of a solitary tree where the shade offers not rest but ambush. Further away, a giraffe passes through the acacia treetops, its impossible neck slicing into the horizon with ritual slowness. Columns of baboons patrol their territories, tense and aggressive, while thick-bodied, lethal snakes rest beneath the burning stones, ready to defend their place. Even army ants drag out their doom in relentless formations. Every dawn, when the mist recedes and the dark earth reveals its paths again, the cycle begins again. Death watches from the treetops, from the tall grass, from the twisted branches. A caracal advances like a brief, tense shadow, nameless without witnesses. While in the heights where the air becomes thin and frost covers the rocks at dawn, other creatures, more discreet and hardened, resist the impossible cold of the peaks, clinging to a life that seems suspended in time. Kilimanjaro is not a postcard. It's a living frontier where the rules change with altitude and danger lurks around every corner. There is no mercy here. Life is not a right, it's a conquest that must be repeated every day without respite. Predators hunt. Herbivores flee. And when no one is looking, the earth itself decides. Nothing is guaranteed. The strongest may succumb to a clumsy oversight. The swiftest may die in an ambush. The most prudent may never return. And the little ones, those tiny inhabitants who barely disturb the ground as they pass, can fall into their own labyrinths of death. This is not a refuge, nor is it hell. It is an untouched territory where the law is not written. It is imposed with force, violence, and blood. Welcome to Kilimanjaro, the mountain that breathes, watches, and claims its own. On the lower slopes of Kilimanjaro, where forests break into jagged clearings and morning mist is trapped between the trunks of twisted acacia trees, moves one of the most enigmatic creatures of this ecosystem. The leopard, patient, invisible, makes silence its tool and stealth a natural extension of its body. In these lands, where dense vegetation alternates with expanses of dry land and fragments of mountain forest, this feline has perfected the art of disappearing. Unlike Kilimanjaro's other top predators, the leopard does not dominate by numbers or brute force. He doesn't hunt in packs or claim territory by shouting. He prefers solitude, darkness, and paths only he knows. He moves without witnesses, marking his dominance with minimal signs. A trace of urine at the base of a trunk, a faint mark on the bark, a fresh footprint on the bank of a stream. No one else needs to know what happened there except himself. It has a body tuned to the limit. At first glance, it gives the impression of not carrying a single ounce of fat. Every muscle fiber is exposed beneath its mottled skin, a compact and flexible structure of power that moves with a blend of weight and lightness unusual in big cats. Where the lion displays bulk, the leopard suggests restrained strength. This musculature allows it to perform a feat that few animals can match: climbing vertical trees, carrying in its jaws prey often heavier than itself. This behavior isn't an extravagance, but a vital necessity. Scavengers abound on Kilimanjaro. Spotted hyenas, jackals, vultures, and mongooses patrol tirelessly in search of easy scraps. That's why a corpse on the ground can last only a few minutes before being disputed. Therefore, the leopard drags its victims to high branches, away from ground-based competitors. There, among the leaves and shadows, it devours in peace. And although ascending with such a load seems impossible for any other animal, it does so with disconcerting ease thanks to abdominal and shoulder muscles that act like a pent-up spring. But trees are not just your private pantry, they are also a refuge and a watchtower. From there he watches, sleeps, or simply remains motionless for hours, waiting for his surroundings to reveal his next opportunity. And when the temperature drops and the shadows lengthen, he descends again, merging with the light-dappled ground. The leopard's beauty is not mere ornamentation. Its spots are a masterpiece of evolution. This irregular and fragmented pattern makes it invisible in the mosaic of light and shadow of the lowland forest and undergrowth of Kilimanjaro. Where a uniformly coated animal betrays its presence, the leopard dissolves. And that same aesthetic, effective for hunting, serves another purpose in sexual selection. Individuals with more defined and symmetrical patterns are usually preferred as mates. The quality of their coat and the brightness of the markings on their face and neck are direct indicators of their health and genetic effectiveness in avoiding predators and catching prey. Unlike lions, which organize into structured groups and cooperate in hunting and defending their territory, leopards are solitary animals. They don't hunt in pairs. They don't share their prey. Each individual occupies its own domain, crossing paths with only one other during the mating season. Even then, the interaction is brief, pragmatic, and marked by constant vigilance. The encounter between two adult leopards is as intense as it is brief. They recognize each other, approach cautiously, and during those days, the male accompanies the female, protecting her from other suitors. Outside of this mating window, encounters often end in aggression. Leopards avoid their peers for sheer efficiency. Any unnecessary proximity entails a risk they'd rather not take. Two predators with identical habits competing in the same space only reduce their chances of survival. That's why each one moves along different routes, using specific trees, secret paths, and water reservoirs that they keep as private knowledge. And it is here, in this region of forested slopes and volcanic rock passes, where the leopard finds a unique advantage over other hunters. Mount Kilimanjaro, with its irregular geography, clearings, and scattered heights, provides ideal terrain for this animal. No other predator in these lands exploits the three-dimensional environment like it does. Where lions patrol the open savanna and hyenas roam in packs, the leopard takes over the heights, the hidden nooks, the paths that others ignore. He doesn't compete head-on with anyone. He slips between established hierarchies, invisible, lethal, and silent. As the afternoon draws on and the light filters through the treetops, the leopard, hidden in the low brush, watches. A few meters away, a colobus monkey moves. It senses it's been discovered. The tension is palpable in the still atmosphere where not even the wind seems to dare to move. The colobus runs to the nearest trunk and climbs quickly, seeking the safety of the high branches. But this forest doesn't offer many escape routes. The treetop thins, and at the top there's only room for one. What the monkey doesn't know is that the leopard isn't afraid of emptiness. The leopard ascends, its paws grip firmly against the rough trunk, its entire body adapting to the angle of the climb. Its muscles tense, its eyes fixed on the agitated movements of its prey. As the distance closes, the colobus realizes there's no escape. There's only one option left. In a suspended instant, the monkey leaps, not downward, where the fall would be fatal, but toward the top of a nearby tree. An improbable, desperate leap, more instinct than calculation. The branch creaks under its weight, but holds. The leopard stops dead in its tracks. From above, he watches it disappear among the leaves of the neighboring tree. There is no frustration. There is no anger. In the leopard's world, there is no time for regrets. The energy wasted in a failed attempt must be recovered elsewhere. Without pausing, he descends the trunk and re-enters the bushes with the same calmness that had brought him there. That same day, the sun begins to set, and with it, the temperature drops. The clearings are filled with long shadows, and the small antelopes leave their hiding places to feed. Among them, a Madokwa advances in short, nervous hops, his ears moving like tiny antennae, constantly scanning. In his world, everything can be a threat. But this time, there's no pursuit, just a fixed, motionless stare from the thicket. The leopard waits. Hidden in the shadow of a volcanic rock, a few meters from a thorny bush, the Madokwa approaches, confident in the false security afforded by the sunset. In a controlled leap, the leopard covers the distance in 2 strides. This time there's no chance of escape, nor any branches to provide cover. The ambush is clean, lethal, silent. With its prey secured in its jaws, the leopard doesn't stay on the ground. As it has done countless times before, it climbs with its prey to the high branches of a solitary tree. There, high up, where neither hyenas nor jackals can reach him, he settles down to devour his trophy. He does so without haste, without making a sound. Only the slight creaking of bones breaks the stillness of the afternoon. Hours later, with its stomach full and its prey scattered across the branches, the leopard lies down in the fork of the tree. His body, which during the day tensed and deployed in hunting movements, now rests, but without letting down his guard. From his height, he surveys the surroundings. The nocturnal jungle stirs, but he no longer needs to move. The day has been his. He has failed and won, as has been the case for generations. From the canopy, only their eyes remain open, reflecting the faint light of the moon as it begins to rise over Kilimanjaro. The same leopard, which is deeply fearful, sometimes exposes itself to situations that other animals would never do, but it does. He starts his day early, while all the other predators are still coming to terms with the morning, waking up with some fatigue. The leopard number. He's a true killing machine, a killer always looking for more meat and situations that send his adrenaline rushing to the highest levels. His journey isn't that long. A few days earlier, he had spotted a large group of baboons, a truly large group. He knows their routines, their habits, all the places where their potential strawberries tend to live. The puddles where they drink water, where they leave their young when they go out to look for food, but above all where they seek shelter when they need to rest, under the shade of Kilimanjaro's sun. Anticipating that they would be asleep at that hour of the morning, the leopard begins his hunt. He approaches slowly, putting his body to the ground when he thinks he is seen. Slowly, meter by meter, it approaches. But the baboons, always alert and on guard, are alerted when the leopard is within striking distance. They're not monkeys, they're not innocent, and above all, they're not cowards. One of them screams. He gives signals, and the vast majority of them wake from their slumber. The leopard must now face his mistake, his fatal arrogance. It is not his style to escape, because that is a symbol of cowardice. Decide to confront them. The large group of baboons is approaching. There are dozens of them, and baring their enormous teeth, they are closing in on the circle. In a staggered fashion, they attempt to attack him, driving him back. They scream and hold their tails high, signaling that they will not surrender until he dies or abandons the spot. The leopard frowns. It growls. When one of the baboons approaches, it attacks with its sharp claws, swipes at one, moves away, and another tries again. For minutes, the scene remains tense. Neither side gives in. The baboons advance. The leopard defends itself without looking away, without showing fear. But inside, the calculation has begun. It's not a lion, who can rely on the help of its peers, nor a predator of collective strength. The leopard is alone, and it senses that there is no honor in dying for stubbornness, nor victory in an impossible battle. With one last furious glare, the leopard retreats, not as if defeated, but as if understanding that time lost in a pointless confrontation is time stolen from its next hunt. He goes into the undergrowth, disappearing into the shadows of Kilimanjaro. It wasn't cowardice, it was prudence, because in the jungle, courage isn't always measured by endurance. Sometimes it's demonstrated by knowing when to give up, when to let anger cool and reserve strength for the right moment. He's lost the battle, but not the war, because, while the baboons celebrate their small victory, the leopard has already decided to return. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point one of them will make a mistake. They'll let their guard down. And then, the relentless hunter, without warning or mercy, will settle his score. In the dry crevices, under the relentless sun that scorches Kilimanjaro on its mid-foothills, secrets unfold that mammals could never imagine. The region's snakes, from the dark and stealthy spitting viper to the robust and enigmatic helmeted viper, reveal a world where life follows different ancient rules without social compromises. These snakes, which rest in the accumulated heat on stones or slither among dry leaves, can remain in states of almost zero activity for hours. without their metabolism betraying their presence. Unlike mammals, whose body temperature remains constantly fluctuating, reptiles slow their vital processes to a minimum, as if time had stopped in their bodies. In this absolute stillness, they survive without leaving a thermal trace, invisible to the eye and the pulse of the environment. However, coexistence with other reptiles does not imply affection or alliance. An echis and a betis may share the same burrow or hunting area, not out of agreement, but because the cost of a violent confrontation is greater than temporary tolerance. There, indifference is the rule. There are no hierarchies or social roles, only the cold acceptance of the other's presence, calculated based on the energy that could be lost in a fight. Cannibalism is another face of this brutal economy. A viper can simply devour a fellow snake, a functional act that doesn't alter the population structure or generate subsequent conflicts. In contrast, in the mammalian kingdom, cannibalism is a phenomenon fraught with social and emotional consequences. In reptiles, however, it is a functional act devoid of social conflict, a practice that reflects a much more ancient and pragmatic biology. Thus, in this reptilian world, life moves to the rhythm of pragmatic survival, a theater where emotions and relationships are left off stage. In these lands, the most ancient biology manifests itself in its purest forms, and Kilimanjaro holds these silent stories that mammals will never be able to understand. In the cool shade of a fallen tree, a helmeted viper rests motionless on the warm earth. Its thick, triangular-scaled body reflects the filtered light, but its small, fixed eyes reveal a constant alertness, a perpetual calculation of risks and opportunities. Unlike its neighboring mammals, it does not show tension or fear in the presence of a mongoose, one of its main predators. The viper senses very well that its poisonous armor and thick skin are enough to deter most attacks. When the mongoose approaches, moving swiftly and boldly, the viper remains impassive. There's no immediate fight or flight. The reptile relies on the effectiveness of its defense and on the calculated indifference it maintains toward its potential enemies. Only if the threat becomes imminent will it respond with a swift, lethal, and lightning-fast attack. This moment of tense but peaceful coexistence encapsulates the reptilian philosophy. Saved energy, avoided confrontations, long-term survival. While the mongoose seeks an opportunity, the viper conserves its strength, aware that in the reptilian world, conflict only makes sense if it guarantees a tangible benefit. There's no room for emotions, only for decisions that span millennia. Further on, in another hollow of dusty earth, an echis pyramidum slithers slowly through the gloom cast by fallen branches. No one sees it. No one hears it. But its venom, more lethal than that of the helmeted viper, can stop an antelope's heart in minutes. Here, among predators hunting each other, even silence can kill. And while mammals struggle to assert their power, deep underground in Kilimanjaro, these invisible creatures maintain their ancestral reign. No one challenges them, no one tries to break their law, because there are no possible pacts with what lives without emotion. While the vipers rest in their lethargy, hidden under stones and roots on the lower slopes of Kilimanjaro, another, smaller but no less implacable threat is on the move. Here, where the mist hangs from the mountain at dawn and moistens the dark dirt paths, an organized crowd moves beneath the leaves. They are army ants. They don't build permanent nests or tunnels. They are nomadic. Their colonies can travel for days, traversing long kilometers through patches of humid forest, destroying everything in their path. Each individual seems insignificant, but together they form a relentless unit, a living current that advances, hunts, and consumes without a trace. They do not build permanent nests or tunnels. They are nomadic. Their columns can reach tens of meters in length, and within them a strict discipline reigns, regulated by chemical traces. The workers follow the pheromones that others have left on the ground, and thanks to this invisible scent, they manage to maintain the cohesion of the group. But sometimes, amidst the chaos of the terrain, at a poorly marked fork, a fragment of the column loses the main trail. There is minimal disorientation, almost imperceptible at first. One line of ants begins to follow another, and then another, and without realizing it, they form a circle. It is the beginning of a rare but lethal phenomenon, the death spiral, thousands of bodies following the trail of those who preceded them, revolving tirelessly around an empty center. The circle widens, grows, compacts, while the ants continue marching without understanding that they are chasing their own companions. From the air, it looks like a dark whirlpool, a trap of its own instinct. For hours, the spiral remains active. Fatigue and heat cause the first few spirals to begin to collapse at the edges. Those who fall are ignored, and the march continues. There's no purpose, no predator, no escape, just the chemical echo of a mistake. The reasons for this behavior are straightforward. It's a direct consequence of their collective tracking system, which relies entirely on continuous olfactory cues. If those signals are accidentally interrupted or diverted and no individuals reconnect with the main column, the group is caught in a loop. Occasionally, when a scout ant manages to cross the spiral and find a new route, it can establish a new trail and break the circle. But if none of them make it in time, they all die there, marching around a void. Most of the time, the spiral dissolves due to exhaustion. Hundreds of bodies are left lying on the ground, and a few scattered survivors rejoin other columns or disappear into the undergrowth. This is how this mechanism works, without intention, without moral, without lesson. Only the cold weight of blind organization and of accidents that even in the best regulated nature can lead to catastrophe. In the midst of this dispersion, as the spiral begins to fragment and hundreds of disoriented ants move away from the circle, the ground becomes a mosaic of erratic bodies. Among the low branches of a bush, a Hartlaub's turaco remains motionless. This bird, an inconspicuous inhabitant of mountain forests, is primarily a frugivore. But in the jungle, every opportunity counts, and unprotected insects are a resource that should not be wasted. The turaco descends, swift and silent. It lands inches from the commotion. It pecks at insects that wander away from the spiral, concentrating on the slower individuals, those that have strayed far enough away to be defenseless. For him, there's no drama in the disintegration of the spine, just accessible, easy nourishment. Thus, fragments of the catastrophe nourish others. What for some is a fatal disorder, for others is a resource, an opportunity amidst the chaos. On the open plains and wooded glades of Kilimanjaro's mid-foothills, where grasslands give way to scattered acacias and thorn scrub, walk the tallest creatures on the continent. Giraffes, with their beige skin and distinct brown markings, dominate the landscape from above, like ancient sentinels observing the world from another dimension. At first glance, its gait seems calm, but behind that image of stillness lies a creature of biological extremes and violent pulses. Because it would be a mistake to think that their world is bloodless. It would be naive to imagine that a species that has managed to survive for millions of years, carrying the tallest neck in nature, has done so without an ounce of brutality. Adult males, driven by the heat of the breeding season or the dispute over foraging areas, engage in formal and meticulous combat. They fight, using their long necks as projectiles to attack their enemies, and each blow, with the force concentrated in the head and the fur-covered horns, can fracture bones or cause an opponent to collapse. Ossicones, which appear harmless, are devastating weapons. Some males develop calcium deposits that harden their foreheads and crowns, turning them into bony sledgehammers. The head of a male giraffe in combat is in effect a living wrecking ball. They fight mostly for mating rights, but also over temporary hierarchies, access to the best supplied trees, or simply to resolve tensions built up in loose groups, where there are no permanent herds, but rather changing groupings. On an anatomical level, its existence defies all logic. This animal has pushed its nature to limits bordering on the impossible. Its neck, which can reach more than 2 meters in length, is supported by a series of elongated cervical vertebrae and a network of prodigiously adapted muscles and tendons. To pump blood to its brain, at a height of more than 5 meters, its 14-kilogram heart generates an internal pressure twice that of a human being. If a giraffe had the cardiovascular anatomy of a typical land animal, it would faint every time it raised its head. Every daily action requires her to perform complex maneuvers. To drink water, she must spread her front legs in an awkward position and crouch vulnerable, a disadvantage well known to predators. Even in this simple gesture, it is evident that this creature is a biological miracle, forced to redefine its behavior by the singularities of its design. Because giraffes have done this to reach the highest fruits in the trees. Otherwise, they would not have been able to survive in an environment where competition on the ground is fierce and constant. Even when the miracle of life arises, its conditions are extreme. A giraffe, pregnant for approximately 15 months, leaves the group in the days before giving birth. She does so silently, sheltering in a sheltered area to give birth to a calf who falls from a height of almost 2 meters. That first impact is the inevitable beginning of its existence. There is also an almost secret detail. The hooves of a newborn giraffe are covered by soft tissue that protects the mother during birth. This tissue hardens rapidly after birth, within hours, allowing the baby to walk quickly because here remaining motionless is equivalent to instant death. And it is in that final scene that nature grants respite. The mother remains with her young, her gigantic silhouette casting a shadow over the ground scorched by the mid-afternoon sun. The newborn wobbles, takes his first clumsy steps. The wind stirs the acacia leaves. There is no blood, no combat, no death in that instant. Only the silent continuity of the species. Because in the world of herbivores, although life is still about survival, there are moments of peace and rest. And in that image, between the oblique light and the motionless branches, Mount Kilimanjaro breathes. Among the hot rocks that dot the lower slopes of Kilimanjaro, in the clearings where the sun breaks the shadow and the earth cracks at midday, there exists a discrete creature that barely alters the landscape. Rock vultures, small mammals with compact bodies and brown fur, slip between crevices and overhangs without attracting the attention of larger predators. At first glance, they might be mistaken for large rodents or wild rabbits. But beneath that nondescript appearance lies an ancient story. Isolated and cautious, the procavids lead a nearly monotonous existence. They feed on dry leaves, small shoots, and low grass. The day begins early, when the rock still retains the chill of the night, and ends before nocturnal predators claim the land. They don't hunt, they don't stalk, they don't fight. They just flee or remain motionless, relying on their small size and fur to confuse the hunter's vision. Unlike the widespread image in certain stories of territorial and screaming animals, the procavid avoids confrontation whenever possible. Their high-pitched calls aren't proclamations of violence or signs of defiance. They're fragments of basic communication, warnings of an approaching shadow, or the warning that the heat is already unbearable on the bare stone. There is no leadership, no conquest, no glory in their world, only a silent coexistence regulated by distance and shared refuges. What's most extraordinary isn't their modest routine, but their lineage. Although they resemble a common rodent in appearance, their closest relatives don't crawl across rocks or flee from snakes. They share ancestors with elephants and manatees, colossal aquatic creatures whose lives are lived at opposite ends of the natural world. The procavid is a surviving fragment of an evolutionary branch that took the path of the tiny, the discrete, and the terrestrial. Proof that, in African biology, nothing is exactly what it seems. But passivity comes at a price. High above, suspended on a thermal current rising from the rocks, an eagle keeps watch. This bird of prey has learned to recognize the slightest movements on the ground. A vibration among the rocks, a reflex, a futile dash. Against this natural predator, the procavid doesn't stand a chance. When the bird pounces, there's no warning. Its talons close on the small mammal's compact body with bone-shattering force. The procavid doesn't die instantly. It emits a short, high-pitched screech that dissolves into the warm air. He tries to wriggle free, to move his hind legs, to find a crevice, but the bird holds him, pressing him against the rock. It allows it to thrash about, grants it a moment of false hope, and when the tiny body dares to struggle, the eagle lets out a harsh, dry cry, a sound that pierces the stillness of the afternoon and rattles its prey's marrow. There is no battle, there is no mercy. The life of the procavido, contained in its age-old stillness, ends in the clutches of a hunter who grants no respite. Because on Kilimanjaro, even ancient species, those that survive hidden, must pay for their permanence. And immobility here is a cruel sentence. As you climb the slopes of Kilimanjaro, the landscape changes. The red earth cools, the vegetation becomes denser, and the nights are no longer a refuge of warmth, but of frost. Stunted plants and permanent fogs cover the cracks, only the hardiest persist. While smaller species shy away from the relentless cold of the heights, the eagle finds the peaks of Kilimanjaro not a threat, but a strategic refuge. There, where oxygen is scarce and winds cut through the bare rock, this bird has learned to dominate territories that others avoid. It prefers heights because isolation guarantees less competition. On the high cliffs, their nests are out of reach of ground predators, and the visibility over the open valley allows them to detect even the slightest movement on the ground. This adaptation has its price. The nights are long and deadly. Frost-laden blizzards lash the headlands relentlessly, but the eagle's nature doesn't allow for retreat. When the currents become unbearable and the snow buries the dry branches that make up its nest, it remains. It doesn't move, it doesn't protest, it doesn't seek shelter. Over the mother's motionless body, the flakes accumulate for hours, forming a ghostly silhouette in the midst of the storm. Inside the nest, the fragile, perfect eggs guard the next generation of aerial hunters. Every minute in that cold is a risk, but also an invisible lesson. There is no useless sacrifice on the mountain, and the eagle knows it. Unlike the small prey of the valleys that seek shelter at the slightest threat, it remains whole until the first light suggests its return. When the slanting rays of dawn break through the low mist, the eagle shakes itself. The accumulated snow falls at her feet. Then she stands majestically, revealing her intact eggs beneath her breast. He has survived an impossible night. He has ensured the continuity of his lineage and reaffirmed his dominance over territories that no other predator dares to claim. There, where life is improbable, the eagle discreetly writes its own story of resistance. In the lower reaches of Kilimanjaro, where tall grass forms natural corridors and dead branches crunch under the feet of those unable to move, there is a predator that has never needed size or fame to dominate its environment. It's the serval, a modestly sized feline with long, thin legs, disproportionate ears, and a gaze that doesn't seek confrontation, but rather opportunity. Their routine begins when the rest of the world dissolves into the heat, when large carnivores sleep under the acacia trees and antelopes avoid open areas. Then, among the shadow-dappled glades, the serval moves. He doesn't run, he doesn't jump aimlessly, he doesn't mark his presence with roars or useless dashes. He walks like someone who has already calculated everything and must simply approach to pick up what the rest have missed. Their greatest weapon isn't their claws or fangs, but their hearing. Their complex and sensitive ears contain more than 20 muscles that allow them to orient themselves independently, accurately capturing the slightest sound. You can hear an insect brushing against two blades of grass 20 meters away, or the delicate fluttering of a bird as it confidently descends to search for seeds in a clearing. This keen acoustic perception is vital to their survival in a landscape where stealth and alertness make the difference between success and defeat. And this time, it's no different. A small bird with brown plumage and a pale breast pecks among the scattered bushes. To any other predator it would be invisible, but to the serval it is doomed. The feline crouches, measures the distance, and just as it is about to tense its muscles for the jump, a pair of dik-diks, small, nervous antelopes, cross its line of attack. He stops. He shows no frustration. No one but him knows he's going to attack. The serval doesn't let instinct dictate his movements. He waits. The dik-diks disappear into the bushes, and the bird has changed position. It is now further away, but in a clearer area. Any other animal would hunt another time. The serval doesn't, because the serval understands that everything in its environment, from the shadow of a rock to the vibration of the air, can be used to its advantage. In a precise movement, he launches his body vertically. The jump is clean, straight, as if propelled by an invisible force. The bird attempts to take flight, but the serval catches it in midair. It swipes at it with its outstretched claw, not to tear it apart, but to destabilize it. The impact is enough. The bird falls into the grass. The serval lands beside it soundlessly, catches it with a sharp bite, and withdraws it into the weeds. For him, there is no glory, no witnesses, no heroic tale. Only a fait accompli, and one unshakable certainty. While others rely on strength or numbers, he rules from the shadows, letting no one see him coming. That is his territory. That is his law. But on Mount Kilimanjaro, not everything is resolved with fangs, brutal chases, or imposing sacrifices. There are creatures whose existence is governed by other rules, tiny beings who have made opportunity their way of life. There, where the earth cracks in the heat or becomes damp with the night rain, the ground becomes a scene unrelated to the great battles, but equally vital. In these minimal domains, the beetle is king. Day and night, these insects roam every corner of the ecosystem, Some feed on plant remains, others on organic fragments that are considered insignificant to the rest, but they all fulfill a specific function to maintain the invisible balance that sustains the giants. Dung beetles, in particular, have perfected a strategy that seems absurd to human eyes, but which has ensured their survival for millions of years. They collect fragments of animal dung and, compacting them into perfect spheres, carry them for miles through the undergrowth and along dark earth paths. This sphere, far from being just any waste, is a food reserve, a refuge for future larvae, and a guarantee of offspring. How do they do it? On their hind legs, walking backward, guided only by their sensitivity to the terrain and the position of the sun. Their orientation is so precise that even if they are deviated, they return to the initial direction without apparent effort. For them, the ball is not just a resource, it is a vital investment, and not everything is routine. Occasionally, another beetle detects that sphere and a confrontation ensues. Two tiny bodies wrestling in the dust circle around the small treasure. There is no bloodshed, but there is a tense struggle, each seeking to displace the other, seize the loot, and continue on their way. Those who triumph don't declare victory. They simply continue on their path marked by the moon and the stars, driven by a force that seems disproportionate to their size. This resistance and physical power are revealed in surprising figures. Some species of dung beetle can lift up to 1,140 times their own body weight. After the beetle has secured its sphere, its work continues. This compact little world is not only food, but also the stage where the next generation will develop. The male and female burrow next to the ball, carefully excavating an underground chamber. There, the female lays her eggs inside the sphere, which becomes a nutrient bank for the larvae when they hatch. The ball remains intact and protected from excessive moisture and predators, functioning as a natural shield in an environment where survival is not a given. The life cycle of the dung beetle is yet another example of how adaptation to a specific niche has shaped unique behaviors that combine strength, strategy, and silent cooperation. Reproduction, far from being a mere matter of instinct, becomes a choreography where every movement, every gesture is designed to ensure the success of the offspring. The parents alternate guarding the chamber, keeping the sphere clean and compacted while life finds its way underground. This commitment to the next generation is one of the factors that has allowed these insects to survive for millions of years in ecosystems as changing and demanding as those surrounding Kilimanjaro. While they carry out their silent and constant work, other inhabitants of the subsurface observe without intervening. Spiders with large, hairy legs hidden in deep crevices and collapsed tunnels wait for their turn, and soon it will come. Because not all small creatures accept anonymity. Some silently shed their skin, change shape, and reappear with new armor, ready to reclaim what's rightfully theirs, violent, ruthless. They possess the determination of big cats, the patience of expert hunters, and an anatomy that has been shaped over millions of years to achieve terrifying efficiency. On the dry, rocky margins of Kilimanjaro, tarantulas don't beg for space. They demand it. They are the absolute queens of the subsoil. Although tiny compared to larger predators, in the insect world their size commands respect. There's none that comes close in weight, strength, or threat. 8 tiny eyes crown their heads. They don't see clearly, but they detect vibrations, shadows, and the tiniest movements in the dim terrain. Their senses go beyond sight. What they can't distinguish with their eyes, they perceive with each of the sensory hairs covering their paws. Thanks to this extreme sensitivity, each of its 8 limbs moves with surgical precision, allowing it to climb, burrow, capture, or remain completely still for hours. Its routine is based on waiting. During the day, the heat of the ground forces it to remain hidden. But when the rock loses its fire and darkness takes over, the tarantula emerges. It moves soundlessly, skirting dry leaves, dodging roots. Its 8 eyes, unable to distinguish shapes, detect the slightest movement. A few meters away, a grasshopper feeds, unaware of its stalking. The tarantula approaches slowly, gauging the distance. When it's within range, it launches a sharp, precise leap. The chelicerae dig in. The insect struggles, attempts a desperate move, but the venom is already circulating. In seconds, the body remains motionless. Then silence. It doesn't devour immediately. It carefully carries the inert body to the entrance of its burrow, where it begins its silent ritual. Patiently, he inserts his fangs and slowly releases enzymes that dissolve the flesh. Hours and hours can pass as he extracts every drop of life contained in his prey. There's no rush, no waste. Just the calm required by a predator who knows how to take advantage of every resource at his disposal. When the last fiber has been consumed, the tarantula returns to its underground refuge. It can spend days, even weeks, without leaving the safety of its burrow, waiting for another opportunity that the night offers. But hunting isn't the only way for her to exist. At certain moments in the seasonal cycle, another, more ancient and compelling impulse calls her to action. It is a silent call, imperceptible to anyone who does not belong to this world of shadows and burrows. When the time comes to breed, the male leaves his hiding place and travels long distances under the cover of night. His search is cautious, marked by urgency and risk. Upon finding the female, he must approach with extreme caution, announcing his presence with subtle vibrations in the ground and in the nearby silk threads. Every movement is a gamble. One wrong gesture, and the female will mistake him for prey. Only then, after a series of tense approaches, will he deposit a tiny drop of sperm into a specially woven net. With the same precision, he uses his pedipalps to transfer it to the female's body. If he manages to retreat in time, he's safe. If he delays, he could be devoured in a matter of seconds. For her, there is no distinction between a mate and a food source. The fertilized female protects the eggs in a thick, resistant, silky pouch, which she keeps hidden among the deepest folds of her shelter. There, sheltered from light and predators, it guards the next generation for weeks, tirelessly monitoring every movement in its surroundings. From this sac emerge dozens, sometimes hundreds of young, fragile, translucent, barely visible in the dimness of the ground. Their tiny legs unfold clumsily, and their first movements are erratic and disorderly. Some try to climb inside the silky sac, others fall to the ground of loose earth. The female remains motionless, vigilant. She doesn't intervene, but she senses every nearby vibration. For the young, the first moments are crucial. Any insect, even another member of the litter, can become a threat. Some scatter immediately, seeking refuge under roots and rocks. Others lag behind, slower, condemned to the first opportunistic attack. Only the fastest and most discreet manage to escape this first circle of risk. Weeks pass and fragile bodies begin to harden. With each growth cycle, their skin becomes an obstacle, a prison they must leave behind to survive. And then, the climax, the mute. Throughout its life, the tarantula must shed its skin dozens of times. It is a slow, exhausting, dangerous process. It begins at night. The spider lies on its side. It breathes heavily. The old skin begins to crack on the dorsal area of the cephalothorax. Little by little, it pushes with its hind legs, freeing first the abdomen, then the legs, one by one, twisting carefully so as not to break them. The risk is real. If any part becomes trapped, be it a joint, a claw, or a fang, it can mean death. A poorly molted tarantula cannot feed or move effectively, but not this one. This one manages to break free, whole, in one piece. Still motionless, its body gleams, vulnerable. The new skin is soft and will take hours to harden, but it's already a different skin. Its renewed exoskeleton will allow it to grow, hunt larger prey, and defend its lair more effectively. In the darkness of the terrain he waits, everything has changed, and yet she's still there, repeating an ancient, lonely, and perfect cycle. The subsoil holds secrets that few see, and this creature, now reborn, is one of them. In the densest areas of the jungle that hugs the foothills of Kilimanjaro, where moisture clings to the bark and tiny sounds weave a seamless texture, an insect remains motionless on a broad leaf. Rest. Ignore the movements of the wind and the rustling of the leaves, but someone is watching him. From a high branch, two asymmetrical eyes have kept their eyes on him for minutes, without moving, without blinking. Each one rotates autonomously, scanning the surroundings, locating threats and prey simultaneously. When both focus in the same direction, an attack is imminent. Without warning, a slimy, extensible tongue, shot out at astonishing speed, attaches itself to the insect's defenseless body. The chameleon swallows it immediately, without fuss, without consideration. For him, there's no surprise, just routine. More than 20 species of chameleons inhabit the montane and humid forests of Kilimanjaro. Each of them has achieved an admirable degree of biological specialization. Their bodies can take on shades of deep green, ashen yellow, or mottled brown, depending on the environment and their physiological state. But the truly hypnotic aspect is his eyes. Each one moves independently, allowing him to cover almost 360 degrees without even moving his body. This phenomenon is an evolutionary adaptation. Its divided vision allows it to monitor predators and detect prey at the same time, minimizing any unnecessary exposure. During the day, the chameleon moves with studied slowness. One leg moves while the other three remain stationary. This almost artificial progression avoids generating vibrations in the branches. When it finds a gap in the light, it stops, absorbs the heat, and resumes its progress. Its prehensile legs, with toes arranged in opposing groups, function as precise pincers, allowing it to grip even the thinnest branches. Sometimes, without warning, another chameleon invades its territory. There are no violent clashes. The confrontation takes place silently through a display of intense colors, iridescent greens, pale reds, deep blacks. Whoever manages to impose the most aggressive and convincing hue retains the position. The loser, dulling its tones and returning to the dull green of the foliage, withdraws without fuss, slipping between the branches in search of a less contested place. This ability to change color isn't just a visual fancy. Behind this transformation is a complex system of specialized cells called iridophories, which contain nanoscale crystals. These reflect light in different ways, allowing the chameleon to modulate tones according to the environment, its mood, the temperature, or the presence of rivals. In a matter of seconds, this vital strategy can decide whether a chameleon remains unnoticed or becomes prey. However, in the final stage of their lives, some specimens show a different transformation, less controlled and much more vulnerable. The aging chameleon begins to lose the precision of its mimicry. Its body takes on contradictory colors, electric greens mixed with purple tones and ochre flashes, no longer responding to any threat, courtship, or territorial dispute. It is your last biological reflex. Just minutes before dying, the chameleon's entire body explodes into a succession of impossible colors. Iridophore cells go haywire, releasing their final pattern of hues as if the organism were trying, in its final seconds, to encompass all the colors of its existence. The animal remains motionless, covered by that bright and absurd light, in a clearing where the vegetation recedes, and then an inevitable question arises. What goes through a chameleon's mind before it dies? Does it see its own body, feel the jungle one last time, remember old confrontations or fleeting hunts? Nature doesn't provide answers, it only leaves signs. And on the bark, the chameleon's body rests, covered in nuances that no one will ever see repeated. On the slopes of the majestic Kilimanjaro, where morning mist clings to the treetops and humidity soaks every corner of the forest, wildlife deploys its survival strategies in a routine marked by risk and constant adaptation. This mountainous enclave, covered in lush vegetation and exposed to unpredictable weather that can change in a matter of hours, is a mosaic of ecosystems where each species plays its part in an intricate web of life. From the heights of the canopy, where sunlight barely filters through the leaves, to the dark, tangled understory where the roots of giant trees create an impenetrable labyrinth, competition for food, shelter, and reproduction sets the pace of life. There is no respite for those who inhabit this vertical world. At the top of this high forest, colobus monkeys reign supreme. These primates stand out both for their elegant appearance and for their unusual ability to move precisely between branches separated by gaps of up to 15 meters. Their bodies are adapted to this challenge, with long, muscular limbs that allow them to perform spectacular jumps with exceptional agility and balance. Its glossy black, two-tone coat with long white stripes running along its back, shoulders and bushy tail acts as a visual beacon among the dense foliage, helping to keep the troop together even in areas where direct vision is almost impossible. These monkeys have developed a unique diet. They are almost strictly folivores, depending on young leaves, tender shoots, and flowers that grow high in the most inaccessible trees. This type of diet, lacking in easily assimilated nutrients, has forced them to evolve a digestive system unique among primates. A multi-chambered stomach similar to that of ruminants, packed with symbiotic bacteria capable of fermenting cellulose and extracting the energy hidden in plant fibers. Without this adaptation, the life of these primates would be practically impossible. But even at high altitudes, dangers lurk. Their exposure in the canopy makes them potential prey for silent hunters like tree leopards, sharp-clawed crowned eagles, and constrictor snakes lurking among the branches. Therefore, vigilance is an essential part of their daily routine. While some individuals leisurely pluck and chew leaves, others remain alert, observing from strategic positions for any strange movement or unexpected sound. Cooperation is vital. A single alarm call is enough to trigger a synchronized flight, a dance of leaps and bounds toward the densest areas of the canopy where the predator loses its advantage. At the heart of the troop, the young are the most precious asset. At birth, they have pure white fur, allowing them to blend in with the morning mist and avoid detection. After 3 months, their coats darken and take on the classic black and white color scheme of adults. The females cooperate in their care. They take turns carrying, protecting, and cradling the young, creating a living circle of protection during times of rest or danger. If a predator lurks, the young are sheltered under their mother's bodies or moved to safer places within the tangle of branches. Not far away, another group explores a group of wild fig trees in search of fresh food. Alpha males, guardians of the territory, vocalize loudly. Their deep growls travel through the foliage, warning neighboring troops of their presence. These calls, which can be heard more than a kilometer away, serve to avoid unnecessary encounters with rival groups and potentially fatal fights. But the laws of the forest are not always respected. This female has entered heat, unleashing a palpable tension in the air. Her scent, imperceptible to humans but irresistible to colobus dogs, disrupts the daily routine. 2 adult males stare at each other, distrust shining in their eyes. The first challenge is subtle, an upright posture, a low growl. Then come the displays of strength, violently shaking branches, powerful leaps, grunts that pierce the silence of the canopy. Young females and young cubs cautiously move away, surrounding mothers with nursing babies. A confrontation is inevitable. The males pounce on each other with unbridled fury. There's no strategy, just brute force, bites to the neck, shoves to knock the opponent off balance, and kicks aimed at vulnerable areas. Branches tremble, green leaves cascade, and shrieks mingle with the creaking of wood under the weight of the combatants. After a few minutes, one of the males, wounded and exhausted, retreats. Humiliated, he walks away from the group, while the victor remains standing next to the receptive female, thus securing his right to reproduce. But the calm on Kilimanjaro is short-lived. When night falls, cold replaces the daytime heat, and the colobus monkeys huddle together in tight coils to conserve heat. Lacking the ability to build complex nests, they rely on the thickness of their fur and shared warmth. They nestle on thick branches, their bodies intertwined in a tapestry of black and white that blends with the darkness. The young, still fed on their mother's milk, hide under their mother's warm coat, protected from the wind and dew. Dawn brings activity back to the forest. The first rays of sunlight illuminate the dew accumulated on the leaves, an essential source of water in this ecosystem where streams are scarce. The colobus monkeys resume their search for food, moving cautiously through the trees. But they're not alone. Birds, insects, and other primate species also explore the same canopy, vying for buds and flowers. The competition is fierce and constant. The balance is delicate. To avoid depleting the resources of any one area, colobus troops travel great distances each day, tracing variable routes that allow them to find new food sources. However, every additional meter traveled increases the risk of encountering a predator or a rival group. In this vertical world, survival depends on every decision, every leap. Thus passes the morning. While a troop devours tender shoots on a fig tree, a sudden silence falls over the forest. The birds fall silent, the leaves cease their murmur. Something is lurking. The alpha male stops chewing, something alerts him. A short growl runs through the group, an unmistakable sign of danger. From the shadows, the agile outline of an arboreal leopard emerges like a spectre. Its supple body, adapted to hunting at high altitudes, glides between the branches with blood-curdling dexterity. He has stalked the troop for hours, waiting for a mistake, a distracted hatchling, an isolated youngster. Chaos erupts. High-pitched screams pierce the air. Young birds cry, and females shield them with their bodies. Males leap from branch to branch, creating confusion to distract the predator. The leopard pounces on a juvenile colobus monkey that has fallen behind. But the branch gives way slightly under its weight, and that instant is enough. The young monkey leaps into a neighboring tree, saving its life by a hair's breadth. The leopard growls in frustration. Its eyes search for another victim, but the troop has already scattered into the dense, unreachable thicket. The hunt has failed, but on Kilimanjaro nothing is definitive. Patience remains the hunter's best ally. Slowly the leopard begins its descent, carefully feeling each branch. The colobus monkeys, still tense, watch from above. They know that the danger never completely disappears. As the day begins to fade and the last golden particles stretch over the savanna of Kilimanjaro, the mountain and its slopes descend into a dangerous calm. Impalas, with their ears always alert, know that at that moment every sound, no matter how insignificant it may seem, can mean the difference between life and death. But there's a particular silence that doesn't belong to the wind or the bushes that settle in the night breeze. It's a dull, dense silence that weighs on the air, and it betrays that someone is there, not moving, not breathing more than necessary. A few meters away, hidden behind a network of low acacia bushes, fixed eyes study every movement of the young impala that has moved away from the group. There's no urgency, no desperate hunger, only infinite patience. It's the leopard, but not the hunter who leaps from the branches. This is another animal, one that understands that sometimes prolonged fear destroys before the swipe of a paw. The impala senses it but doesn't see it. It knows something is following it. It feels it in its skin. The leaves don't rustle, the branches don't shake. Panic begins to invade the mind of this prey, something it will regret in the minutes that follow. The impala stops. It raises its head. His ears spin like antennae. His legs are tense, ready for a stampede that doesn't know which direction to take. There is no escape without a goal. And the leopard knows this, remaining motionless, observing, learning. Because their art doesn't always consist of attacking immediately. They're a studying animal. They discover patterns. They memorize a victim's nerves. They recognize how many seconds it takes an impala to decide. And this night is not for killing, but for sowing fear. The scene drags on. No one moves. The impala takes a step, another, and then feels it. A brief breath, an imperceptible touch of air on the back of his neck. The predator has shifted position. It didn't jump, it didn't run, it just shifted a body to the side, just enough to let you know it's still there, that it's not safe, that there's something in the undergrowth that just won't tire. This game can last for minutes, sometimes longer. The real fear isn't in the ambush, it's in the lurking, in the certainty that you can't escape from what you can't see, and that nature, at its cruelest, does not always grant the relief of open persecution. Sometimes he lets his prey fall asleep with terror alive in their bones. The impala, desperate, lets out a high-pitched bellow, a sound that is not just a warning, it is a plea to any other impala that might hear it. But there is no response. The herd has moved on as the law of the jungle dictates, and in that solitude the young impala is lost. The leopard takes one last false step on purpose so that a branch shakes. And at that moment, gripped by panic, the impala runs. It runs aimlessly, tearing the ground with its hooves. Because it's no longer possible to think, there's no strategy, only flight. And that's what the leopard wanted, to sow chaos, to scout out the path, to discover weaknesses. There will be no blood tonight, but he's planted a seed, a mental mark that, come the next hunt, will make that impala hesitate, stare for a second too long at a motionless bush, and that second will be enough. This is how fear hunts. This is how the leopard works when it decides not to attack. What other beasts achieve with fangs, he achieves with waiting. And on Kilimanjaro, silence always has an owner. Night has settled over Kilimanjaro like a warm, dense hand. The sounds of the mountain disperse among the tall grass and dry branches. But not all hunters sleep. There is one who remembers, who waits, who keeps in his memory the humiliation of a retreat. And tonight he decided not to forget. The leopard moves through the low trees and paths that only it seems to know. It doesn't seek out the entire group of baboons, nor a single dominant male. Its target is another, a more effective one. He has noticed in previous days that the troop moves every evening toward a hollow where trees are less abundant and shadows are more concentrated. There, the young are left in the care of young females, while the stronger adults disperse in search of leftover fruit. The leopard doesn't need a confrontation. It senses that attacking the entire pack would mean certain death. But it understands the unwritten rules of that small world. Taking a cub isn't just revenge, it's a blow to the core, to the structural security of the group. It is sowing fear where it hurts the most. Taking advantage of the distraction of the scattered group and the natural advantage of darkness, the cat glides among the lower treetops. It doesn't move on the ground. It doesn't need to. From above, it locates a straggling cub that has fallen asleep half a meter from the sentry. It does not descend immediately. It observes. It calculates. She lets the wind swirl in her favor. The leaves of a bush rustle and distract the caregiver. Only then, in a movement so fluid it's barely noticeable, does she descend mid-leap, catch the baby with a precise bite on the neck, and soar back up among the branches. All in silence, without the troop noticing anything except the sudden silence of a baby that no longer makes a sound. He doesn't take the young with him to the tall trees where he usually eats. Not that night. He decides to leave her halfway, on a low, visible branch in full view of the group. A warning, a mark, a reminder that even in times of calm, there's a predator who doesn't forget. When the baboons discover the loss, chaos ensues. High-pitched screams pierce the night and the entire troop gathers around the tree. But it's too late. The leopard has vanished among the branches, leaving only the weight of its presence. The mountain returns to silence. But it's not the same silence. Now it's tinged with fear. Thus the leopard regains its place. Not through brute force, but through revenge executed with the rigor of a predator who doesn't limit himself to blood. He understands that sometimes true control is exercised by letting others live knowing that someone is watching them. Up above, the treetops remain dark, the stones still retain the warmth of an extinguished sun, and the grassy clearings are tinged with elongated shapes. What during the day was the scene of hunts, confrontations, and escapes is now plunged into a dense calm, barely broken by the distant song of a nightbird. Here, on this ancient mountain, the violence doesn't stop with the setting of the sun. It only changes form. In the lower reaches, army ants continue their march, and opportunistic predators roam the margins in search of stragglers. On the mid-slopes, caracals lurk beneath the bushes, snakes wait motionless, and baboons try to sleep, remembering the cries of the day. Higher up, where vegetation dissolves into rock, the Procavidae evade their fates, while eagles watch from above, ready to punish the stillness of the weak. And in the middle of it all, the leopard, observant, patient, master of a strategy that doesn't rely on immediate pride, but rather on opportunity. He has failed, he has waited, he has taken his toll. Because in this unforgiving environment, defeat and victory are merely pauses in an endless sequence. From the heat-scorched plains to the snows that endure on the summits, Kilimanjaro is not just a mountain. It's a landscape of extremes where delicacy and brutality, beauty and death coexist. A space where every living being, large or small, writes its story on Earth, even if it's just for one day, just for one night. This is how this place is sustained. This is how the cycle continues. But this is not the end, because with every dawn, a new story takes shape. And in the shadows of this ancient mountain, there's always something left to discover. Nature doesn't stop its course. It's the world that decides when to look away.